Welcome to Life in the Hologram on Revolution Radio. We had technical difficulties, but we went ahead with the recording. Enjoy the show.
How about I say, welcome to Life in the Hologram on the Revolution Radio Network with Madeline Rudy and Caroline Bell Tumblety. And it is Friday, August the 16th, 2024. And here we go.
Here we go. And we have a really incredible guest with us tonight, today, wherever you are. It could be afternoon. Madeline usually says that. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And it's the compelling true story of how a casino enabled a compulsive gambler to become one of the biggest gamblers in the world. Mr. Z by Don Zarin. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is a true story that takes you behind the scenes to show how a casino's actions enabled a compulsive gambler to get to levels never seen before. The book brings the reader into one of the craziest periods in gambling history. It reveals the backstory to the beginning of casino gambling in Atlantic City and the gambling scandal that ensued between David Zarin and Resorts Casinos International. David Zarin was known as Mr. Z at the Resort Casino internationally in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1978. When casino gambling began, he was a complex man, a consummate risk-taker, gregarious and exciting to be around, qualities that made him a successful entrepreneur, an enticing ladies' man, and eventually a fearless, fixated and driven gambler. Mr. Z ultimately became, at the time, the largest gambler on a sustained basis anywhere in the world. This is a story how it all came to pass, the compelling characters and the relationships involved, and how the consequences of his actions impacted those he loved and cared about. This is not your normal out-of-control gambling story. We see how Dave Zarin, a compassionate and politically astute businessman, recognized that bringing affordable housing to Atlantic City was critical to fueling its economic comeback and to improving the lives of its residents. This risk-taker, immersed in an environment seeped with temptation, was destined for disaster. This is a rare story that takes you behind the scenes of the casino and how the casino's actions and decisions enabled Mr. Z's gambling to reach unprecedented levels. This book also explores the failure of casino gambling as a model for the economic resurgence of Atlantic City. The story leading up to these events and the many twists and turns following these events and the compelling characters surrounding Mr. Z will keep you mesmerized and wondering what else can happen. Mr. Z's gambling debacle ultimately led to one of the most famous tax court cases in U.S. history. Mr. Z was the author's dad. He loved and admired him, but his dad's love of risk turned his whole family upside down. Mr. Z's story is ultimately about his family and the many fascinating people who knew and admired him in all his complexity. About the author, Don Zarin is an international attorney specializing in international anti-corruption and international trade. He is an avid traveler and has lived and worked abroad in numerous countries. Don also worked as a volunteer for a non-governmental organization in several African countries on the International Humanitarian and Development Assistance Project. Don is currently retired. He lives in McLean, Virginia, and spends his free time with his wife, kids, and 8 grandsons. Wow. He enjoys traveling, going to the racetrack, flying, sailing, and sitting on the beach with a good book. And you can visit him online at www.mrzbook.com. And a big welcome to you.
Yeah, welcome.
Well, thank you both. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. And I know that we've got some technical difficulties here that we hope we're going to iron out. And let's talk about your book.
Yeah, it was riveting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the book, First of all, it's based on a lot of documentation. I had a lot of depositions, transcripts. I had all of the casino records, project documents, court cases, because ultimately there was an awful lot of litigation that came out of this. And so really, as you sort of indicated, I thought it was worth doing because it really provided possibly one of the only true stories looking behind the scenes to give you the insight into really what was the casino thinking while they enabled my father, Mr. Z, to really become, particularly over a 4-month period in 1980, playing craps, probably the biggest gambler in the world on a sustained basis. And I don't think anybody who's ever played craps ever came close to the level of play that he ever did. And so I wanted to tell that story. I wanted to tell the story about Atlantic City. But, there are also so many twists and turns in the story that I thought it needed to be told. And as I was writing it, I actually think it will make a great Netflix series someday. And that was how I wrote it with that in mind.
I would love to see it on Netflix. Yeah.
Quite interesting.
So, yeah, go Madeline.
I know a lot of people that got headaches from Atlantic City.
Tell us more.
If you're a gambler, and if you're a compulsive gambler, you in the long run you can never be a winner. You can be a winner for a weekend, for a week, maybe for a month, but not over the length of time. And my father started gambling. I mean, he was a gambler really his whole life. He was originally a civil engineer. He graduated just as the war was breaking out. He was a naval architect in Philadelphia during the war. He started to play poker. That was really the beginning of his career in gambling. He then, after the war, he started to play poker with a lot of people in bigger stakes. That a lot of Hollywood friends of his would come into New York, and he would have big poker games. There's a story I tell in the book where at one time, and this was what we're talking about, the 50s really. There was a Hollywood producer who lost to him $20,000. So this is like, equivalent to like $300,000 or $400,000. He didn't have the cash with him. There weren't any ATMs. So he went into the men's room, pulled off a piece of toilet paper and wrote a check for $20,000 and gave it to him. And he actually took it to the bank and cashed it in. So that was that kind of gambling. He then became really loved the races. I grew up at the racetrack, at Monmouth Racetrack. We had box seats. What he loved particularly was going to the racetrack on Saturdays afternoon at Monmouth, and then going to the racetrack in New York, Yonkers or Roosevelt at night. It was his double header, and he would comment, "This is really a family togetherness." And then he ultimately bought racehorses and raced horses up and down the East Coast. Had a horse that he was going to enter in the Kentucky Derby, but 2 races beforehand, it broke its bone coming out of the gate, was kicked by another horse. He went to the casinos. He went to Vegas a lot. But he would always hit his credit limits. And so really his gambling started with poker and really ended up at the casinos. But all the time that he would gamble, he always had limits, guardrails. When, you go to the track, you bring the cash you have. When you play poker, it's the cash you have. In Vegas or in the Bahamas at the casinos, there's a credit limit. Here in resorts, for the first year and a half, there was a credit limit. But then, as we'll get into it, eventually to keep his business, because he was their best customer by far, they gave him unlimited credit, removed the last guardrail. And then there's a 4-month period in which his compulsive gambling was really out of control.
Wow.
Now, how did that affect you? Do you gamble?
I gambled a little bit. I love the racetrack. I grew up with him at the racetrack. We'd get up 6 in the morning and go out to the racetrack and watch the horses, doing their training. So I love that. I still do that today. Every time, I want to, between my wife and I, if she wants to do something that I don't want to do, I'll threaten her with buying a racehorse, and that'll usually win the argument. At the casinos, I gambled when he was there a little bit, because you could go to the casino. He was comped. He had the Frank Sinatra suite, which is the premier suite at the casino. He lived there. It was his home. It was his office. He was comped. You cannot be comped more than he was. He had a limousine at his service. He had any guest who wanted to come could stay for free and eat in every restaurant and go to the boutiques, do anything they wanted. So I would visit occasionally. I didn't like that because I didn't like what I was seeing. So I don't really do much gambling at the casinos anymore. I can, but I don't. But it doesn't turn me on at all.
Wow.
Interesting. My dad's, poker, and had his own craps games running himself and his own poker things.
Did he play? Did he play at a casino or was it a private?
No, I think when did he die? He died in 73. So he was around at the time of Al Capone. So he had, like a hops factory in Philadelphia, and like I opened the book and it's like, oh my God, it's like my life.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who love the casinos. Obviously, gambling today is bigger than it's ever been with online gambling and sports betting. But casinos is a big attraction. People always wonder about how the comps worked, and then this book gets into how much they comp them and why. It also talks about how they track big gamblers. I mean, they kept track of him every day. They have a rating system for gamblers, 1 to 5, 1 being the best. And so they rate their gamblers, and that helps to determine their comps. They also have what they call a red book, in which it's an annual diary. Every day, every night, they put an estimate of a gambler's winnings and losses in that diary. So when they wanted to know how much my father had lost over a year and a half, they just went to their red book, and they knew that he had lost over about 15 months, $2.5 million, which today is about $12 million.
Yeah.
And so, so those are the kinds of how they keep track, and there isn't anything that's going on at the casino. They don't know every moment how much someone's betting. But let me maybe it might be interesting for the readers if I describe sort of how it led up to the sort of penultimate 4 months, and then sort of if I can sort of describe that to you.
Go ahead.
How that went. So casino opened on Memorial Day in 1978. Resorts was the only casino that had opened up until that time. There was only gambling in Atlantic City. In Las Vegas. So this was the first casino ever outside of Las Vegas. There were great expectations for how gambling was going to go in Atlantic City. During Memorial Weekend, they had about 100,000 persons a day visiting the casino. In the first 3 months, they set records way beyond any casino in Vegas. Property values when the casinos opened had gone up 10 times from when the casino regulation laws had passed a few years earlier. So it was a really big operation. So my father started gambling at the beginning of June with a $10,000 credit, with drawing on $500, putting a $25 chip on the craps tables. Do you guys know how to play craps at all?
No.
Well, Madeline, you do. Your
A
father
little.
Well, just really quickly, if you there's something called a pass line. Let's say you put $25 on the pass line. If a 7 or 11 comes up, you win. If a 2, 3, or 12 comes up, you lose. But if a different number comes up, let's say a 6, then you only win the money on the pass line if a 6 comes up before 7. And if a 7 comes up, you then lose that bet. But what people also do is they bet on many of the other numbers that are on the table, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. And they put money on that as well, which my father always did. And if the number hits, you win money with a little bit of odds. But if a 7 comes up, you lose everything on the table. And that's sort of and that's kind of how he played. So he started off with bets of $25 and a $10,000 credit. By the end of the following year, that was in June 1978. I'd say November 1979, his credit limit had reached over $200,000, which is about $1 million today. He was rated number 1. He was their biggest customer, but they were really worried about losing his business because other casinos had started to open. Regency Casino had opened, and others were opening. They were vying for his competition. Regency Casino took him on a 60-foot yacht to the Bahamas, and when when resorts found out about that, they were really nervous about what to do. And so they had this big meeting deciding, well, what can we do to keep Zarin as a customer? And they decided to give him unlimited credit. Now, that's a violation of every possible casino regulation that there is. This is the first time that he ever had the guardrails removed. So what happened was, beginning from January 1980 through the end of April 1980, for 4 months, he would gamble. He would be putting he would put down, they also raised the maximum on the table for each bet. So he could put $2,500 on each of the numbers. So he was eventually putting down a total of between $20,000 and $25,000 per roll of the dice. And that's about $105,000 today. Every time a 7 would come up, he would lose. So that he was risking about $100,000 on every roll of the dice. And he played from 12 to 15 to 17 hours a day.
Wow.
Nonstop for the first month, maybe 20 hours, 20 days of the month. But by March and April, it was almost every day, nonstop. The crowds around him were just growing exponentially. He had no idea what checks he was signing. He was signing hundreds of thousands of dollars of personal checks and casino checks called markers. He had no records of that. He was worried that some of his checks wouldn't clear, so he was writing what are called non-gaming checks, which you could then take. He originally told the casino it was for payroll, but it really wasn't. And he was cashing $100,000 of non-gaming check, putting in a security box that night, and the next morning walking to his local bank 3 blocks away with $100,000 in cash, depositing it at his local bank. Now, $100,000 in 1980 is $450,000 today. He did that 3 or 4 times a week for 4 months. Over a total of 4 months, he deposited $7 million in cash at a bank to cover all that he was betting. The casino officials, they were watching this. They were saying to each other in their lives, they'd never seen anyone bet at this sustained level for this length of time in their lives ever. And how long could it last? And the credit manager was saying, well, it can't last. Eventually, he's going to run out of money. But don't worry, he has a lot of property and will get paid. And so they were reporting that into the president every day while they were watching this gentleman out of control. And when you're, a compulsive gambler, and the book, I think, tries to convey what that person felt like, the adrenaline rush for each roll of the dice, a high and a low. For him, there was nothing like it. It was a complete fix. It was your classic example of someone immersed in a drug. And so every roll of the dice was a new adrenaline rush for him, and he could think of nothing else. And he said several times to people that this was better than sex. So he can give you a little bit of a comparison to how he felt about that. Eventually, at the end of 4 months, and we can get into the details, but eventually he could not sustain the checks. They started to be returned. The casino cut off his credit, and everything came tumbling down. At the end of that, when they then figured out how much he had won and lost, they determined, the casino determined, that over 3 months, from February to April, he had signed almost $17 million in checks, personal checks and casino checks. That's about $75 million today. He had written millions of dollars in non-gaming checks that he deposited in the bank. He paid back $12 million, and he owed the casino $4.5 million. And that's sort of the penultimate story. But then there are a half a dozen twists and turns that then occur after that.
Yeah. Well, I think it was, I agree, that it was the casino's failure too to stop him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, you can't keep going like that.
No, I think the analogy to people drinking at a bar and the bar serving an alcoholic is an apt analogy. They clearly knew what was going on, and there was no way to stop him. We didn't know the depth of his gambling at the time. We knew it was bad. We tried to stop him several times, but we were unable to. The only people who could have stopped him were the casinos, and they shut him down. But they only shut him down when they were worried that his checks were going to bounce.
Right. I dated a gentleman too. He owned his own business and everything, and he would go down there and he would play the same game as your dad, because I went with him already, and he lost his business, everything. And I even think he went to jail for a while.
So how about you, Madeline? Do you like to gamble?
Absolutely.
So what do you play? What's your game?
Oh, the one-armed bandits, slot machines.
Okay. All right. What's your minimum?
When I lived in Sedona, the casino, my Indian friend from India, she liked to gamble, so she got me going to the casino, and I was doing very well for a while. I mean, I was even putting money in the bank. It's like, this is my part-time job. But then I wasn't.
Right. Isn't that the story for mostly everybody?
Yeah. So then it's like, well, I got to stop this crap.
So I worked in a casino. Yeah. I worked in a casino. I saw I worked in a casino here in Scotland, and the biggest gamblers were the Chinese. They would just sit there all night long because it was opened like 24 hours right through the night. Yeah. It's actually, and what you said like about your dad, like it was better than sex. This was their whole life, like, and I don't think there was really many winners.
No. Not in a long time. I mean, if you play, everybody I know goes to the casino, and everybody goes. Most people now go to the casinos, or you'll have great winnings, and you'll come back and you'll brag to your friends. I had a great weekend, and I had But then if you go back, the next weekend or the weekend after that, eventually those winnings disappear, and then you're in debt, and Gamblers Anonymous is there's not enough help for that, but that's a big issue these days, and it's gotten way worse. But back in 1980, when he was gambling, they had just recognized compulsive gambling as an illness. That was the first time, and we really didn't understand it at that time. So that was a very new event. And just as the casino was operating, in fact, it was one of the a meeting took place on one of the top floors at resorts for a compulsive gamblers meeting. They should have invited my father. He didn't realize it at the time.
Wow. Yeah, and then I had another friend of mine. He was down there gambling too, but then he would say he was investing your money, and he'd take people's money, and he really, because he took some of mine and my son's, my friend, and he gambled it all away, and then he, people put lawsuits against him. It was like over $1 million.
Sure. Well, there are some pretty good poker players who definitely have investors when they play poker, but craps is a much more, you can't control the dice. Poker, you have some control of your betting. For craps, you absolutely don't. And any effort, there are some people who try and teach you how to throw the dice at a certain number, but that has not worked.
Yeah, I think if my father would have been alive today, he might have been in these poker tournaments. And he was an excellent pool player, because if he told you the ball was gone in the corner pocket, it went. He would just clear the pool table.
That sounds great. I'm sorry. It'd be nice to meet him. How long ago did he pass away?
He's gone. He'd be like 104 years old. But his buddies were the Banana Boys.
The Banana Boys. Like the Rat Pack, huh?
Out of New York. One of the Banana Boys had a bar down here in Pennsylvania.
Well, the other part of this is, there's a whole redemption element to my father, because ultimately he then realized he was a compulsive gambler. He then became a very active member of Gamblers Anonymous. He became the chairman of the advisory board of the National Foundation for Pathological Gambling. He spoke around the country. He became a leader on that. He raised money for that foundation. He made a contribution to Johns Hopkins Hospital for beds for people who were gamblers. So, he then, there's that whole other element of him that then turned around completely. And that was nice to see. That was nice to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a wonderful story. And didn't he do something for like Atlantic City down in the inlet?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was,
A developer.
he was a very, very successful housing developer for senior citizen housing, low and moderate income housing. And so he took that knowledge to Atlantic City, realizing that there was a need for housing when casino gambling was passed. And he became one of the most successful businessmen in Atlantic City. And he received a number of awards, the Businessman of the Year award, and so forth. So, yes. And then he had a great vision and tenacity to get things done. He helped to build, to really develop a part of the inlet that was not developed. Obviously, he when his gambling broke and he got into trouble, he stopped for a while, but he was able to then get back into it and was very successful. And then there were a couple of other twists and turns that impacted on his ability to continue to do business. But yes, he was very tenacious and very good at what he did, and was probably one of the best known businessmen in Atlantic City during that period.
Yeah.
So it was really two personalities. There was David Zarin, the really successful businessman who knew all the politicians, all the business people, and everybody else in town. And then there was Mr. Z, who was the most famous person at Resorts Casino, who knew all the officials and everybody in resorts. And those personalities would take turns who was in charge. He would receive make a great speech and get an award for a businessman as David Zarin, take his tie off, go to the casino and be Mr. Z, betting the largest amount that anyone had ever bet in the history of gambling, certainly at a craps table. So those two personalities would go back and forth. And the book kind of takes you back and forth with those two personalities.
Yeah, it was an interesting book for sure.
Where can people get your book? Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It is the ebook and the paperback book, and also the hardcover book. But you can order it at any bookstore if you want the hardcover book. Mm-hmm. But it's available certainly at those places. It's been out for maybe a month.
Oh, cool! And congratulations on the publishing.
Now, what compelled you to really write it?
Well, I think a little bit of what we've been talking about. I think I wanted to tell the story of how and give the insight of how a casino enabled a compulsive gambler to get to the levels of gambling that he did, and really a character study of a compulsive gambler at the highest levels. So that was really what drove me. I thought it was a story that needed to be told, but also I wanted to talk about the whole redemption part. I wanted to sort of talk about, there was such hope and expectation with Atlantic City that casino gambling was going to revitalize the city. And obviously, if casino gambling didn't revitalize the city, it would have been a disaster for the city. And so it really sort of saved them in one degree. But all of the expectations that it was going to be this great, successful, very developed city never materialized. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and why that happened and what the political complications were, what the infighting was going on politically, but also what the leaders, I think, misunderstood. I think when they passed the casino gambling, they really thought, they thought they can rely on market forces to revitalize the city. But if you've ever been to a casino, you know that it's a completely self-contained unit. There's no trickle down. They want everyone to stay there. There's no windows. You're there, and they want you to stay there. So it didn't really trickle down more than a block or two from the boardwalk in Atlantic City for those who've been to Atlantic City. The city government was also really corrupt and inept. Everybody there got more and more people, the mayors kept getting prosecuted. And the state had sort of taken its hands-off approach to getting involved. The casinos, there were loopholes in the law. They didn't have to invest in Atlantic City. They didn't make any investments for the first 6 years in Atlantic City at all. And the city was just unable to come up with an action plan, a development plan. So they really missed the window, which didn't last very long, because then other states started to, enact casino laws in their states, and now many states have casinos. So they lost that window where, for the first 5 or 10 years, they had people, over 4 or 5 million people within a 3 or 4 hour driving distance to go to Atlantic City. It could have been and should have been a very, very successful city, and it really, unfortunately, was not.
Yeah, I used to like to take the bus. You could get on a bus.
Exactly.
You go down and you gamble. They give you $20. You went down and you gambled, and then you got on the bus and you came back home. But you can't even get a bus to go to Atlantic City anymore.
No, that's true. I know. I also know many people who were on that bus.
Yeah. Did you ever go to Atlantic City when you lived here?
No, I never did. No. But I did see the buses. I did. When I lived in New York, there was buses that left like for the Catskills, and we'd go down. It'd be an overnight. Some of them would do like the round trips.
Yeah.
So how many casinos are in your country, Carolyn?
Well, they come and they go here, like I would say there's a few, there's at least 100 in
100?
Scotland. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it goes back, like when I worked in the casino, I mean that was early 80s, and it was Rio Stakis, and which was Greek. It was a Greek family that moved in and opened casinos, and that was a boost for a while, like employment, as well as like a lot of people wanted to gamble. They had like blackjack and roulette. It was real, and it was a lot of stars would come, like a lot of celebrities. So yeah.
What about the horses? Did you ever go to the racetrack?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Love the like my dad too, like horse racing. My dad was like wasn't he a big gambler, like as far as like a lot of money, but he was really good like at picking like the winners. But it was always like £1 here, £2 here.
There's a story I write in the book, when my father had a racehorse, and my grandfather, his father, lived nearby Monmouth Racetrack in
Yeah.
Asbury Park, and he would come to the racetrack as well. My father had box seats, and we'd go there. And when he had his racehorses, one day the trainer called him up and said, "You need to go to the track the next day. Your horse is running in the fifth race. We kept him from winning in the last race, and now we're running against horses that are of a lower class. He can't lose."
Mm.
So this was about as close to a legal fix as you could possibly have. And so we rushed out to the track the next day. I, of course, took off from school, and my grandfather, who had a walker, would hobble over and meet us at the track in the box seats. And he had a little bit of a rivalry with my father, a little bit, when my father was doing well and during his periods when he was doing well. So the fifth race came along, and we all rush out to make some bets. And my grandfather goes out with his walker, and my father goes out, and I go out. And we come back, and the race goes off, and our horse wins by 7 lengths. And I'm jumping up and down. My father's up and down, and I look at my grandfather, and he has this big frown on his face. And I said, "Well, grandfather, what happened? Didn't you bet on the horse?" And he said, "Well, I was at the men's room, and I was in the urinal, and the guy next to me leaned over and gave me his tip, and I bet on his horse."
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's
But
horse racing for you.
in the book, I thought that the trainer seemed a little nefarious to me.
I did not like the trainer.
Yeah.
I would say I don't think he crossed the line, but he was certainly shady.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought he's not really running this horse the way he should.
No, that's not an uncommon event at racetracks.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted my father to buy a racehorse.
But they are amazing animals, and we still go to the we were at Preakness, and we'll still go there and things like that, and we'll still go. I'll go to the racetrack. I'll take my wife maybe every 2 or 3 months. We'll go to the racetrack.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is fun. It's a lot of fun.
We have like a Holy Spirit farm. It's like an animal rescue, and they do rescue racehorses. So they put them up there and they let them, they have a nice life.
They can, yeah, for sure. Well, when this one horse that we had got injured, we put it out to pasture. We operated on it and then put it out to pasture.
Yeah, because there's not too much you can do after they break their foot.
No, not much you can do at all. Not much.
Yeah, well, it seemed like you had a good relationship with your father, though.
I did. I mean, I can say he was really one of my best friends, for sure. I mean, he had his flaws, and he had his idiosyncrasies, and he did some things that were definitely not, I would say particularly great. But I'd say his pluses outweighed his minuses for sure. And he was really one of my best friends for sure.
Yeah, and after he got over the gambling business, I mean, he turned himself around and became successful again.
He did, and he was also a terrific grandfather. Grandkids really loved him. They really loved to visit. So, yeah, I would say he did a complete 180-degree turnaround, and then ultimately when he retired, I think he actually enjoyed himself. So he did fine.
Well, did he teach you how to play poker?
No, he never taught me how to play poker. He did teach me how to play bridge. He was a consummate bridge player. I don't. Do you play bridge? Do you guys play bridge?
No.
It's a interesting, complicated game. He was, I would say, I mean, he belonged to a club in New York called the Cavendish Club. It was the leading bridge club in the country. The members of the U.S. team were members of that club, and he would play there. And of course, the stakes were very high. They gambled a lot playing bridge. There was a guy named Charles Gorin, who's a very famous writer of bridge books, probably the leading author on bridge books, which he got to know very well. He would drive him around to his speeches and so forth, so he could talk with him about different ways to play. And I would play with him in some tournaments when I was about 13 years old, 12 or 13. And I enjoyed that a lot. If you play duplicate bridge, for those who are listening, you play about 24 hands, and you have a partner, and everyone plays the same hands. So at the end of the evening, you can measure your score compared to everybody else's score. And he could recall at the end of the night almost all the cards played in 24 hands, which is a phenomenal feat.
Absolutely. What do you have, a photographic memory?
He almost did, it seemed, because I mean, I played one hand, I could not remember what that hand was. I'm playing the next hand. That was my limit of recall.
I was always sorry for myself that I never let my father teach me how to play poker.
Well, we've been playing gin rummy with our grandkids. They're pretty good, but we haven't been playing with any money yet. But hopefully not.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how people's lives shake out. Maybe it was his lesson to do this, compulsive.
Took risks. He was a risk taker. I think he enjoyed the thrill of it all, and so that was his personality. That was his lifestyle. He had a friend of his, so I remember a guy named Jerry Marvin, and I don't know if you ever watched Guys and Dolls, the movie Guys and Dolls, where these two people would bet on anything. And at one point they said, "Can you bet on the color of your tie?" Well, they would challenge each other to bet on anything. And it was fun to watch them do that. So that was part of our lifestyle. That was the part of lifestyle I grew up with, but I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds fascinating. Great childhood. Yeah.
Fascinating with a lot of consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I had that too with the money situation. Now you have it. Now you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's a big gambler has that. Compulsive gambler for sure. Now you have it, and now you don't. That's part of it. And really, there's not enough being done to help compulsive gamblers. And I really think the federal government, the state and city governments really need to do more than that. It's particularly now where there's online gambling, sports gambling.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, back then in 1980, with one other casino outside of Vegas, it was relatively mild compared to what it is today.
Yeah. Well, now the casinos are all over.
They are.
So,
They're all over, and you don't have to leave your house. You just get on the phone.
no. No, you don't.
And, and then you can bet on who's going to win the elections. You can bet on who's going to catch a pass in a football game. I mean, there are so many variations that it's gotten really pretty intense.
Yeah, and it's been devastating for people as well, like as far as relationships and like losing everything, and the people, their family, not even being aware that they had a problem.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Used to be when there were just racetracks, the community where the racetrack was located usually never did very well because people were losing money and then didn't have money to spend in the community. So it usually had an adverse impact on that specific community where the racetracks were located.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad used to write numbers.
But what is that? What is that, Madeline? Right
Well,
number?
you have the lottery today.
Oh, okay.
Back in the day when they didn't have the lottery, they would do like a 3-number, whatever. You pick 3 numbers and you give it to the bookie and they, turn it in. And then they call you up and say 258 and they hang up the phone. And I get the call the one time. And it's like, what? And then I think I forgot the number that they gave me.
Madeline, when was the last time you were at the casino doing slots?
Oh,
Yesterday? Was it
gosh.
yesterday? Not yesterday?
No, for a long time. I played it on the phone.
Okay.
No, I'd like to go to the casino.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, when I lived in Sedona, I went to Cliff Castle Casino all the time until I started to lose. And then it's like, no, you can't go anymore.
Yeah,
and then like I said, I used to like to go to Atlantic City too. And I got lucky. The one time I thought, well, we were getting ready to leave, and I thought I'll put one more quarter in because I needed money to pay my mortgage. And I put the quarter in, and I won $1,000.
Wow.
I said, hallelujah, and thank you.
Yeah.
I got to pay my mortgage.
There's
But,
always,
and that's a way you can get addicted.
I was just going to say that there's always that story, but you walked away for that moment. Mostly people, they may walk away for the moment, but then they go back again and they lose all that plus more. So
yeah, and I know I was playing a penny machine at Cliff Castle the one day, and all of a sudden, ding, 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 ding. I thought, what the hell happened here? And the guy comes. I said, well, how much did I win? He says, $1,600. I said, what?
Nice.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, just imagine living in resorts. My father had the premier suite. It was his office, his home. Any guest could come, stay in any room for free, eat in any restaurant, go to the boutiques, buy anything, get a massage, um, unlimited comps, limousine that would take him back to his home in northern Jersey or not, yacht that would take him to the Bahamas. So that was the ambiance that really enticed him and entices a lot of people. A lot of people who go to the casino are really proud of the comps they get and they really like it. So
absolutely,
that's part of the enticement.
And I'm sure those 2 friends that I told you about got all those comps. I'd stake my life on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I also, I did not know all the background about how they rate you and how they keep track of your winnings and losses every day. That was pretty interesting.
Well, even the little guy, if you go down enough, then they start sending you little things. You got a free night.
Right.
Come on down. You have a free overnight stay or a free weekend stay. Yeah. And then you put how much money in the machines, and then it wasn't free after all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my friend lives near Foxwood, so she goes there a lot and she gets a lot of perks. But her daughter is also, I think she's like the craps person that runs the table. Because we were there the one time and there 2 people were winning. So they said, here to my friend, and gave her some chips. And then we were down cashing them out. And the lady says to me, didn't we give you any chips? And I said, no. And she handed me some chips. Here it was like $200. I'm like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have won a lot of money.
Probably they did. Yeah.
Because I think, well, the Foxwood is owned by the Native Americans. So that's an interesting concept. So was Cliff Castle Casino.
Mm.
They're taking the white man on one by one, getting their money back.
When I was in Arizona, there was a casino. I think it was close to Maricopa, and it was the reservation wasn't doing well. You know, like really not doing well. But the casino seemed to be thriving, but it didn't seem to be going into the community.
No, the whole goal is to keep you there, not to spread the
Yeah.
money out.
Right.
So, and it's hard to imagine, although it's hard to imagine not doing well in the casino because the odds are in your favor. If you have volume gambling, then you've got a certain amount of revenue that you're pretty much guaranteed to have. But no, every casino is designed to be self-contained. The restaurants, the entertainment, they don't want you going outside to other restaurants and other places. So it doesn't help the community. And then those in the community go and gamble. And so they have less money and they have less money to spend, for food, for restaurants in the local area. So ultimately it can hurt the local community, but really help the casino.
Well, I think Atlantic City kind of went belly up a little bit, but it seems like some of the casinos are coming back. But the thing is, there's a lot of strange people on the boardwalk. You're almost afraid to walk on the boardwalk, especially at night.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose that's the. I haven't been back for a few years, but years ago, when my parents had an apartment down there, after the gambling debacle, we would go down and visit and go to the beach and everything. But we would walk on the boardwalks at night. It wasn't a problem, but it may be now in the last few.
Well, no, I was down in, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and it was not like it used to be. It's scary.
That's a real shame. That really is.
I mean, scary. But as you said, there's a lot of Oriental people. It's a lot of Oriental people gambling. A lot.
Yeah, big gamblers.
Well, the Chinese they've had Macau outside of, those were big gambling areas for years and years and years. And so, yes, they are, many of them are big gamblers.
Well, and a lot of the Indian people are big gamblers too.
Mm-hmm. We used to tell them to leave, like when they were winning.
Yeah.
We used to go leave.
Take your money and run.
Go. Yeah, I get fired for that job. Yeah.
So, Carol, what were you doing at the casino? What was your
I
work?
was cocktail waitressing. Like I was like doing my cocktail, and it was all like comp. It was all free drinks. Like you would go around, and like you would see somebody winning, and we'd be like, "Leave, take your money and go."
So you weren't kicking them out because they were winning. You were trying to get them to go out with the winnings. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you sit there, you're going to lose. Go. Like, because some of them would win big, like you would see them, like they would be getting feverish, like wanting to, and they were going to lose it all. So it was like, no, go, go.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, some of my friends would like put a $25 limit on themselves.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's a very hard to do that if you're a real gambler. But.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like it's like a drug, right? It's not easy.
It's a great form of entertainment if you can control it, and most people
you
can.
Don't get carried away.
And it's a wonderful form of entertainment, and you just figure this is the amount of money I'm going to spend for this weekend, and we're going to go stay at the hotel and do this and go to these shows. And it's a wonderful time, and that's the large majority of the population. But there's that small percentage of people that they can't control it, and it's devastating.
But don't you think some people have a compulsive addictive behavior, though?
Well, sure.
And that's where it comes from.
Oh, yeah. Irish.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like there's like they say it's a gene, right? There's something with the blood chemistry or something. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that, but yeah. This has been a really, really nice introduction to your book, and I'm hoping everybody's going to head over to Amazon and purchase it, and also like get in touch with Netflix.
Well, you have a website too, don't you?
Yes, it's called MrZBook.com.
There you go. And I guess you can purchase the book on there too, right?
You can purchase the book on the website. Absolutely. That's correct, Madeline. Well, thank you both very, very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry
Thank
about
sorry.
difficulties in the beginning of the show.
No, it was a pleasure.
We have it recorded, so like once I do my little editing, we'll get you a copy of the whole thing.
Thanks again. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Don. And you have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. I still can't get the server. It just keeps dropping, and I don't know if they stopped trying. They said that Studio B was picking it up, so I don't know if they're live on air.
I don't know. Is Willow there? The only way we could find out is tell her to go to TalkStream.
Here, I'm going to TalkStream right here. Let me go. Let me see.
It's interesting. I have to laugh.
Yeah, right.
I have, well, a similar parallel life.
Yeah, like you would have recognized some of what they were saying,
Absolutely. And the one gentleman that I was talking about that lost his business and all that, I went to Atlantic City with him, and he says, "Here's $100. Go play, go do whatever you want." So I went, and I was playing the slot machines. I lost my money. So I went back.
Well, sorry.
Then I had another date with another guy. And he says, here's $100. Go play the slot machines. It's like, I'm not going to be that stupid this time. I'm keeping this money.
Wow. Well, I have on TalkStream, I have Studio B and I have Studio A, and there is nothing going on either one of them.
Well.
Yep, nothing going out on either one. I'm going to see if I can
a snafu.
It's a snafu, yep. Try and see if I can bring it in again, Madeline. We'll get one more shot here, eh? No, I can't get anything. Let's see. And also my camera and my mic dropped the call.
Yeah, I noticed that.
That's never happened. I've never had that before.
Crazy
but it's always something, right? It's always something. And also, like, if the server is moving, it's going to be
tricky.
It's going to be tricky, yeah. All right, I hung up Dawn, but no, it won't come in. Uh-oh, what is happening? Are we calling him again? No, there's only two in the call. Me and you. All right, let's see if I can do it again. Nope, I don't know what's going on, Madeline.
Yeah, it wouldn't connect for me either.
No, so I don't think it's on my end. I think it is on their end. I don't know how to get, well, let me see here. What are we doing? Remove from call. There we go. Thank you for listening to Life in the Hologram on Revolution Radio. I apologise for the technical difficulties, but hopefully they will be ironed out by next week. And a big thank you to Don Zarin for being our guest, and head over to Amazon to purchase his book. Thank you so much.